Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen. Cannonball!
So, which leads me on to the George Floyd case. Some people now go, oh, don't go there, Callum. I'm going to put in a link to you now where Stephen Crowder on his show, he basically has all the footage, the body cam footage leading up to it, which, funny enough, initially that had to be leaked.
Yeah, I remember that.
Which is so dangerous.
Well, news media's actually watched the entire footage and then released their own accounts of the footage, and they lied heavily.
And it was all opinion. News should be boring, and it should be the facts we know.
Just the news.
And yes, Just the News is a great website. News should be boring, but now it's about ratings. They're trying to be like Ron Burgundy. But so all we saw back then, and again, this is another one where I said, I think there's more to it. I don't think this was a racist murder. All you saw was people's phones, a man on the floor saying, I can't breathe. His prosecution team today said this man couldn't breathe 27 times. Again, very vague, because a lot of the times he said he couldn't breathe, he was stood up, sat down, saying he couldn't breathe, when actually there was no external factors affecting that.
May I ask you a question?
Go
on. Now, we've obviously looked, both of us know the autopsy of it and different things, which we will get onto. But my real issue with the whole thing in general is if you have a man in front of you that needs restraining or arresting or has committed something, but he clearly has something wrong with his breathing, or some sort of thing is wrong with him in that moment, is it not the officer's duty to go, let's go get him help first and we'll keep an eye on
They called an ambulance.
They did they?
Yeah.
Because I didn't know whether they...
No, in the footage, in the body cam footage, again, it should be linked into this. And it's a bit unsettling, but I implore you to have the stomach to watch it through, because quite frankly, the truth is more important, because have you heard of David Dorn?
I have, but
But it's a bit, bit foggy in your mind.
Yeah.
Have any of you heard of David Dorn? No. Well, he was one of the first people to be killed in the BLM riots. He was a black man, a security guard, and killed by BLM rioters when they caused over $2 billion of damage in America alone, and other people died. Why? It was all based on lies. And again, some of you might now be thinking, oh, how dare you say that? No, please. Don't just go and look at what CNN, Sky News, BBC have said, because again, none of them showed the autopsy report. A lot of people were watching the trial today and were hearing about things for the very first time. So let me talk you through the timeline. Which again, if you haven't seen the clip, you'll be hearing it this first time. If you have seen the clip we got linked in, you'll have already seen this. But please carry on listening anyway. So George Floyd goes into a shop, buys cigarettes with a counterfeit $20 bill. Now, funny enough, the shop owner could have just called the police straight away, but he goes and asks him to either give him the cigarettes back or come pay with real money. Because at the end of the day, not only is he down some product, he's down $20, because he would have given change for that, and he's only got a fake $20 bill. Anyway, refused to go back in, refused to give back the product, so he called the police. Police turn up. They go through his car, and he's being very erratic, which leads them to believe he's on something, which later on turns out he was. So he's being erratic. His sentences, there's no link to him. He says, please don't shoot me, man, which again, if you've been told for years, the police just shoot black men. Police officers in America are 18.5 times more likely to be shot by a black suspect than a copper is to shoot an unarmed black man. Let that one sink in. But so he says, please don't shoot, man. He's getting all emotional. He's getting erratic. He's not making much sense. And they end up asking if he's on PCP. Or did they ask it later on? They ask if he's on something. And he did actually, in the car, he ingested something, but he'd already, shit was kicking through his system. Because that explains why, you know, these police officers have seen him many times, it explains why he's acting the way he is. So they arrest him, he's getting emotional, they take him to the car, and he's refusing to get in. He is a non-compliant suspect, which leads the force to escalate. And at one point, he goes, "Oh, my mum's just died, man." Turns out his mum had died 2 years ago. So either he's lying to get out of an arrest, or the drugs in his system are just making him think and see shit. So they try and get him in the car. He says he's claustrophobic, despite the fact they've just got him out of a car, a small space. And he says, okay, he's counting out of 3, and he does not get in the police car. So one of them goes round to drag him in. So they try dragging him through, and previous to this, he's already been saying he can't breathe. And even the car, whilst there's nothing stopping his airways or pressing on him, he's saying he can't breathe. So already, I imagine police in this situation have been in this situation before where they arrest someone and go, "Oh, you're breaking my arm, you're breaking," you know, because they don't want to get arrested. They want to, you know, they want to control the situation. But actually, they're not. Or, you know, I can't breathe. So they, again, try a power play for the situation. So they end up dragging him through the car because they try to get him in, and he's squirming. He's squirming like a fish out of water. And he even asks, again, if you've watched this footage, this body cam footage, he asks to be put on the ground. So they put him on the ground, and here's the vital part. Here's where strangers start shouting, filming, and throughout all this, you can actually, if you really do focus on it properly, you can start to hear a change in his voice. Almost like, have you ever blown on the glasses with different levels of water in? It makes different noises. Well, with the autopsy says basically he died from an overdose of fentanyl. One of the side effects of overdose of fentanyl is your lungs start to fill with water, and you can hear his voice change, which I'm going to presume, with an educated guess, is due to the fluid levels in his lungs.
Well, sometimes I've got a bit of trapped air from maybe drinking something, and I talk, and every now and then my whole voice goes, whoa, like really weird, because I've got a bit of air and I have to talk through a bubble, and then I clear my throat, and I'm back to normal.
Yeah, but so, now imagine you know there's a broken pipe in your lungs. And
next time you're in the bath, just head out, go,
just start breathing in, baby.
No, but just talking you're in the water, it is different. It distorts because of the way the waves work.
Yeah, and so they get him on the floor. Now, again, like I said, here's where people are starting. Here's where you see all the original footage. Copper, knee on neck, man saying can't breathe. Now, if you've done first aid trainings, the first thing you do if someone's choking is you see if they can speak. Because if they can speak, they're not choking. Something's in there, it's uncomfortable, but they're not choking. The autopsy report shows no bruising, which would be in line with asphyxiation. So again, he wasn't choked out by the coppers, which is a lot of people saying he died because, you know, his windpipe was crushed. The autopsy does not correspond with that statement. So he's on the floor, knee on the neck, and a lot of people go, well, you know, why was the knee on the neck? Even if he didn't do it, he made it worse.
It's a trained technique.
In the Minnesota Police Department, it is a trained technique. You know, to put part of the whole keeping a suspect, you know, in a controlled position is that's part of it. Now, at one point they think he's on PCP. Now, is it PCP?
I can't remember.
Anyway, yeah, if it's wrong, we'll correct it in the footnotes.
I'll try and find a headline that discusses it.
One of the things with PCP is you like have the power of 10 men. Now, picture a guy 6'4", 6'7", built like a brick shithouse. Now times him by 10. Not only just times him by 10, he's being erratic, he's not making much sense, he's not complying, and he is resisting arrest. Not only that, he has a previous rap sheet like a mile long.
Was he built like a brick shit house?
He was
quite skinny.
No, the guy's got muscle. He was a bouncer as well. He was a bouncer at a club. And he previously, in fact, I'm going to try and get the link for the video of another previous arrest where he's acting quite similarly. That should also be in the footnotes as well. But where was I? So that is a trained technique in the Minnesota Police Department. So let's take all that into consideration. So a lot of people were saying this was a racist murder from that white cop. He's used a technique that's trained by the police. George Floyd is acting erratically. He's resisting arrest. He's got overdose levels of fentanyl, which is 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine in his system. He's got a very long rap sheet. Previous malicious, aggressive crimes. And they've used a trained technique. So people are wanting, and I saw on Julie Hartley-Brew the other day, they were saying, even Julie Hartley-Brew was saying that, well, you know, I'll be boarding up my windows if he's not found guilty. He's like, no, you can't just find an innocent man guilty. Okay, maybe he did some things wrong on the day, in the heat of the moment. For example, they didn't put him in the recovery position afterwards, but actually the way he already was, choking on things, it was easy. You know, the recovery position is designed, if you throw up, you can easily clear them out and they don't choke on the tongue.
By and large, when you're dealing with quite a hostile individual who's known to have a rap sheet, and you know of this because he knew of some parts of it, as we know.
Apparently those two had history.
That's what I mean.
But again, I don't think that should be given too much weight in this, because he never did anything at the time that showed animosity.
But let's be honest, in a situation where things are a bit hostile, you don't necessarily follow, or you should do, but not everyone really follows procedure, especially when emotions are high. You have all these cameras on you. He's just being quite like agitated with you, shouting, "I can't breathe," and you're thinking, you know, you might have been thinking in his head, "Why is he shouting this? You know, he's fine. Like
this man's on drugs."
Like, yeah, it's just he'll be quiet for a bit, and we'll get him up, and he'll be okay. And then suddenly the man goes limp, and you think, "Oh shit!" And then,
or you just think the drugs have kicked in and he's passed out.
But the unfortunate part is we don't know. Well
that's the thing. You never will know. But one thing that we do know is that none of the evidence points to murder. Now, some people seem to have said, "Well, okay, manslaughter," but no, because he did things he was trained to do.
But then I imagine those ideologies, you know, those thoughts would be, you know, he's saying he can't breathe. You have your knee on his neck, and you know.
But he was saying, "I can't breathe," before the knee on the neck, when stood up and sat down.
But let's be honest.
So that we can't just start at a point later on. We have to look at from the very beginning.
If someone says you're hurting my arm, you don't release because their arm isn't vital to them. If someone says I can't breathe, don't you then go, "Why can't you breathe? What's the problem, sir? Why can't you breathe? Are you on?" And if they ask them, are they on something? But if you're on something, you might not be able to articulate.
That is a valid point, actually. But at the same time,
so then surely you go, "Okay, hang on, you've done this crime, but why can't you breathe?" Like, as an officer, if I was an officer myself, that would be yes, there's trained. I have history with this individual. But why can't he breathe? Because
that's a good point, actually.
Has he ever? Because previously, maybe if he had said to him in a previous crime, "I can't breathe," and got out of something, makes sense. But if he's never said it before, wouldn't you go, "Why can't you breathe, sir? What's wrong?" But he didn't do that. Now, I understand emotions are high, so maybe he didn't do that. But he thought, "I'll just detain him. He's a bit on some drugs. He'll be okay." But as an officer, you should go, "Sir, why can't you breathe?" And if he can't,
it's a good point. But counter.
Yep.
He has been saying it for so long, he clearly can breathe. If you can get oxygen in and out to keep saying, "I can't breathe," the airways clearly aren't an issue.
Hey, we won't know.
Yeah, I mean, we'll like to think the courts will find this in a fair way. So one of the other things people say, well, if you put, you know, all your body weight on through your knee on the neck, it's going to cause damage. Well, actually, if you look at it, he's not putting all his body weight on through his knee on his neck. If I kneel down now on two different surfaces, it's not 90 kilos going through both because it's spread out.
But then let's get into this where, you know, you're on a man's neck there, regardless of body weight.
But I see what you mean. But my point is that he's not. One of the arguments I kept hearing was that he's putting all his body weight through his neck. It could be the fact that actually he's putting a little bit of pressure there to keep him still.
Yeah,
And actually, most of the weight is going through the dominant leg.
But again, we wouldn't necessarily know. But
Yeah.
we have to take word.
But what we do know is that
It was a train.
did not kill him.
Yeah, and it was a trained technique.
Yes.
But then, if we don't know how the sentencing will go. But from what you're saying, it should be, maybe it shouldn't be the harshest sentence people are calling for. It's more of a.
But if anyone is to be in trouble for this, it would have to be more of a corporate sort of lawsuit where it's okay. We're going after the Minnesota Police Department to change their techniques.
Not just that.
Because at the end of the day, it's like if I'm taught to drive, and I'm taught how to work the car, I'm taught to drive on the left hand side, and then someone runs out in front of me, and I'm doing everything I've been taught to do. It's not my fault I've hit that man and died.
But let's go on to it's. Brain just went. Carry on. I'll come back to you.
Well, I was actually gonna wrap it up there.
Well,
before-
I was going to say, what comes out of it? What
I-
with all these things in mind, what would you want coming out of it? Because if it's, should there be?
I want I want the media to be in trouble.
But this is what, when you're in the police force and when you're in any line of role, same with me with my fitness job, there's risk assessments done, and you list it off. Should there now be, if the individual you're trying to arrest is having trouble with breathing, the capability to breathe is limited, they're telling you it's limited, should there now be a risk assessment? We go, right, this needs to be dealt with differently. Or should we go, this training technique needs to be changed. They can't kneel on someone's neck. You're dealing not just to appease the mob, although it didn't do any damage, as the autopsy says, is it something we go, right, this is too horrifying to be used now because of the backlash it has brought? Do we get rid of that training technique and avoid from being towards someone's neck? Let's restrain them elsewhere. Let's just keep them sitting in the car, lock the car door.
They couldn't get him in the car. That was the problem.
But if you couldn't get in the car,
they managed to drag him half through, and then he started going inside, and he said, "Get me on the ground. Let me on the ground." So I imagine maybe from what you're saying there, maybe they did go, okay, let's see how we can do this another way. He wants you on the ground. Maybe if we put him in a place where he wants to be, we can control the situation.
Yeah, but
because I imagine they maybe did. I imagine they maybe did when he's saying can't be. Maybe they did all go, okay, let's have a quick check here. And maybe did it all mentally. And went, right, there's nothing we are doing to block his airways, and medical help is on the way. We've done everything we can. Our job now, keep the suspect in control.
But then the training technique of leaning on the neck, it's
questionable.
But it's more than questionable, because if a man's saying he can't breathe and you do that, regardless whether it's a bad technique or not, you're causing for backlash. People are going to get the phone.
I know,
let's look
causing
at
for backlash, but in terms of a bad technique, okay, you're talking from a PR position, and I completely understand that.
PR, it doesn't lead to PR, it leads to riots.
Well,
it leads to all this.
Yeah, I know that's what I mean by the whole PR. But I'm saying, but the technique might be effective, because if you then circle back to the autopsy showed that had no health impact. I do see your point.
Yeah, well, I used this example with you when we discussed it earlier in the day, where in the UFC you can't do a 12-6 elbow with straight elbow down. The reason you can't do that is because one of the commissions in America saw a video on ESPN where they watched men break bricks from a straight arm elbow down, like so, 12-6.
Fucking cool.
But you can elbow 1-7, 2-6.
Can you explain the 1-7?
So just angled. You can elbow.
Okay, so if it's a clock face,
yeah. So 12-6, you can elbow at different angles.
I'm with you there.
Now, actually, elbowing at an angle creates more force, and people have discussed it's ridiculous that you can't elbow someone 12-6. It's stupid. But the commission deemed it dangerous from what they saw, and on top of that, it looks too violent to be in the sport. And although they can speak to actual martial artists, people who are in the ring fighting, and tell you that doesn't affect me at all compared to a different elbow or getting kneed in the face or kicked by shin to the jawbone. But it's there because it makes the sport look less violent. There's an image of this move. Let's just avoid it. And it essentially, the knee on the neck, maybe it doesn't cause the harm, and as it's shown as on the autopsy, it didn't on the neck.
Because actually there was very limited bruising. Sorry, the prosecutor talks about how skin was scraped off. Pressing down on something doesn't scrape skin off.
Yeah.
going across a rough surface does. And that was the getting out of the car. It was a heated moment, but that didn't cause life-changing damage. That instant.
With, so for the knee on the neck then, even if the technique works, the kind of backlash it's gotten, dealing with someone's neck in that capacity, although his weight wasn't on there, there's a risk factor of, well, what happen if, people try to intervene and his knee is on his neck then? Or the public, it causes more riots because it happens again. And so it's a trained technique that
possibly
it
isn't the best technique to actually do the job it's meant to do.
Because I'm sure there's a million other ways to restrain someone than just put.
You asked me what do I want to see from this? Okay, I want to see the Minnesota Police Department learn from this.
Get a bit more funding so they can actually maybe do a few more risk.
Oh no, it's defund the police. That's I want to see them look. Let's look at, because it never hurts to look at ways you can improve.
When you have a leak in the building, you don't go, let's cut the funding for the building. You put a bit more funding and try and fix that leak.
And you maybe look at what's caused the leak.
Yeah.
That's the thing. No one never looks for the root cause anymore. They just jump on the symptom. I want to see media outlets massively punished because they played a huge part. David Dawn would probably be alive today if the full story was told, opinions were kept to one side, and we just saw facts. Not half facts, full facts. Think critically, question everything. Almost nothing is what it seems. See ya!
Bye.